Welcome. My name is Lisa Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Natural Areas Association, and I'm delighted to be here with you today hosting our webinar. I'm not normally the person that you see hosting our webinars, but today I'm taking over from Maura because this is a program that's a little different than most webinars. A little longer today, one that we're really excited to bring to you. So before I get started, I just want to take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about the Natural Areas Association and the goals of today's session. The Natural Areas Association is a national nonprofit organization for those of you who today are new to us. We exist to serve those who steward the land to protect biodiversity. Our mission is to get quality science and best practices into the hands of those who can make an impact on the ground by sharing applied science, practical solutions, and new knowledge. We do this both in person and through digital opportunities, such as our Natural Areas Journal, which is our quarterly publication, the NAA's YouTube channel, where we release conservation science and practice content every Friday, the Natural Areas News, which is delivered to your inbox twice a month, and the Natural Areas Conference, which will be held in Asheville, North Carolina next in October of 2026. We encourage you to join our organization to access opportunities to grow as a practitioner specializing in on-the-ground ecological management, which we suspect most of you are involved in. Membership in the organization includes free access to all NAA webinars, a digital subscription to the Natural Areas Journal, an online digital community, and a network of peers throughout North America, and a number of other benefits. We feel that now more than ever, natural areas practitioners need each other, so we hope you'll consider joining us. An example of one of our programs is an upcoming symposium. We will be offering a 3-hour virtual symposium that will convene leading scientists, land management practitioners, and wildlife professionals who have spent decades focused on high white-tailed deer populations as a leading cause of reductions in local biodiversity and a major factor in the prevention of forest regeneration. This will be happening in just a few weeks right here at NAA. The symposium is intended to highlight recent evidence-based research underscoring the need for deer management in natural areas, an old problem that continues to persist. Participants in this symposium will learn about a scalable, multi-pronged approach being piloted in Virginia, where the Department of Conservation and Recreation's Division of Wildlife Resources and their Natural Heritage Program are collaborating with public and private partners to reduce herd size and shift deer behavior utilizing novel implementation and monitoring protocols, a model that we hope could be replicated in other states. All right, and now on to our webinar. And before I introduce today's presenters, I'd like to go over just a few housekeeping items. Should you wish to use captions during this program, you may do so by selecting Show Captions located on the Zoom navigation bar. We encourage you to participate in today's session. Please post comments or shared resources in chat using the chat function, but please post all questions and Q&A. We'll address as many questions as we can after each presentation, and then we'll have some time left over at the end to circle back to more questions. Please know that the program is being recorded. Everyone that registered for the webinar will receive an email link to the recording in about a week. All right, so over the years, NAA has had this opportunity to play a role in the national conversation about the importance of using native seed in restoration of ecologically important landscapes. So much of this work has been focused on the larger landscapes of the West, and voices around the table have included the federal land management agencies and their partners. Here at NAA, we've had the great fortune over the last decade to witness creative approaches to meeting the demand for native seed and navigating all of the related issues in its use in restoration here in the eastern U.S. and throughout the Midwest. There are many examples within NAA's community of practice, and today we're here to showcase 4 of these successful programs. These efforts involve critically important partnerships between state agency and nonprofit conservation programs and local farmers, seed companies, academic institutions, partner nonprofits, state wildlife agencies, and state seed associations. The 4 programs that you'll be hearing from today are unique in their approach, their funding sources, their challenges, and their successes. Our goal with today's session is to amplifying the voice of small regional seed production collaborations in the broader need for seed discussions. Some of the most high biodiversity sites are being restored by smaller local organizations fulfilling their own needs. We also intend to highlight a few innovative programs utilizing public-private partnerships to meet the need for seed on a smaller scale to demonstrate how this approach can be replicated in other regions. And finally, to help make connections between people, organizations, and funding sources in order to become resources to each other as we tackle the larger scale challenges. So the format of the webinar today, we'll have 4 total presentations. Each presenter will have 15 minutes to present and 3 to 5 minutes for Q&A immediately following their presentation. I'll introduce each presenter up front to save time between presentations. We'll try to allow as much time as possible for questions and answers at the end of each session, and then at the end of all presentations, as I mentioned. I encourage all of you to share your thoughts, your comments, and any resources that you'd like to share with one another, again, in the chat feature so that we can learn from each other. And just a reminder to share any questions in the Q&A function. That will help prevent any questions from being lost today. All right, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our 4 presenters. Our first presenter is Jonathan Young. Jonathan has worked for the National Audubon Society for over 15 years and manages the NATIVE project, Native Agriculture to Invigorate Ecosystems. He works with farmers, partners, and volunteers to produce local ecotype native seed materials for use in grassland restorations. He's worked on restoration projects on both Audubon-owned properties as well as public and private lands. Following Jonathan will be Phoebe Judge. Phoebe is a research associate in the Restoration Ecology Lab at Virginia Tech and the project coordinator for the Southside Native Seed Project. She works with native seed stakeholders across Southern Virginia to increase the availability of native Piedmont grassland seed for restoration and revegetation projects. Prior to this position, Phoebe was the seed program manager at the Southeastern Grasslands Institute, where she worked on the Seeds of Success project, as well as grassland restoration projects across the state of Tennessee. And then we'll hear from Jerod Huebner. Jerod's been the director of Prairie Management for the Missouri Prairie Foundation since 2015. Jerod oversees the management of 35 sites totaling more than 4,900 acres across the state of Missouri. These lands are primarily remnant prairie and prairie reconstructions, as well as woodland and glade habitat. Prior to Missouri Prairie Foundation, Jerod worked for the Missouri Department of Conservation for 10 years in the Central region and more recently in the St. Louis region as a wildlife biologist. And last but certainly not least, we'll hear from Sarah Beier. Sarah is a biologist who is passionate about connecting people to the land through experience and education. As a coordinator of the Kansas City WildLands seed team, she supports a decades-long effort to conserve, protect, and restore Kansas City's remnant natural areas by involving volunteers in land stewardship. All right, and with that, I'll turn it over to Jonathan.
Hello, sorry there. Let's see. Share my slides. All right. Everybody's having a great day today. Yeah, so as she said, my name is Jonathan Young. I'm the Habitat and Working Lands Program Manager for Audubon Delta. I've run our native project for the last about 13 years, I think we're going on with this program now. So we started this program initially to work with historically underserved farmers to produce native warm season grass seed resources that were local ecotype for a specific project. It was a big White River irrigation project demonstration site that was being done in eastern Arkansas that was going to cross some natural areas in the Grand Prairie. So that's kind of how we got started in this whole native seed process. Audubon obviously has a focus on birds, and grassland birds are one of our most impacted sort of groups of birds. That type of habitat has, as we all know, had significant impacts the last 100 years, a long time now. It's been going downhill, and we're trying to bend the bird curve the other way, right? So we're trying to get those grassland ecosystems going back at scale and start making more habitat for grassland birds all over the U.S. But for me, specifically in Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi is our focus. This program is primarily focused in Arkansas. We did work a little bit in Mississippi early on, producing some of this seed, but primarily the majority of our history has been in Arkansas itself. So yeah, we aim to empower farmers to produce local ecotype seed resources for grassland habitat restoration efforts across what we call the Delta. So work for the National Audubon Society. Our region is Audubon Delta, and our 3-state programs merged a few years back, and so sort of increases our footprint, at least my footprint in the Southeast. But yeah, so this project, we saw as a great way to engage farmers, provide like the ecological benefits of having these native plants on their farms, both pollination, soil health, all those things that they get from growing native plants on their farms are sort of side effects of our project. We have, a climate, we have a crop that is sort of outside of sort of traditional row crop commodity prices and all that sort of stuff that farmers have to deal with. That could be another thing that they integrate on their farm to give them a little bit more stability, and put them into markets that maybe they haven't had access to before. One of the things that we really strive to do on this program is to complete the circle for the farmer, not just say, hey, go grow this for us, but also connect them to larger markets and have that stuff sort of built out on the front end, so that our farmers really only have to focus on growing seed, and getting that to a seed company that can then get it cleaned, tested, marketed, and sold for them. So that's been kind of our focus, was working with farmers initially and providing the seeds, engaging them in this conservation effort in their area, right? So nobody's going to do it better than the people that are in these areas that are doing the work. So yeah, back to that Grand Prairie irrigation project. That project cut across a few of our remnant natural areas in eastern Arkansas. The Grand Prairie historically had close to 500,000 acres of prairie across it, with a lot of bottomlands and bottomland hardwoods sort of cutting back and forth across the prairie, and these big pieces in between. Almost all of that has been converted to row crop agriculture now. Arkansas is one of the largest rice producers in the world. We may be still the largest rice producer in the world. I do believe we are. We put out a lot of rice. There's a clay pan underneath our prairie out there, so it's perfect for growing rice. And so a lot of, like I said, a lot of our prairie acres are converted to row crop agriculture, and there's just a few, less than like 450 acres of these prairies left scattered across the region. So this irrigation project was going to cut across a couple of them. So they really wanted to use local ecotype seed to plant these irrigation canals so that we could have some connectivity between these remnants. and provide wildlife habitat and all the benefits that, having these connected prairies would have. So that's like I said, how we all got started. And it's pretty successful. We provided a lot of the seed for that program. Some of our farmers even worked on actually seeding back some of the mitigation areas and things like that. So not only did they grow the seed, they actually got to participate in the conservation efforts of actually restoring some of the acres that were impacted by that program. And it was all in all pretty successful. But we focused on kind of the big 4 or 5 switchgrass, little blue stem, big blue stem, and Indian grass. And that was really all we focused on for the first, I think, 4 or 5 years of this program. But in 2017, we had a bit of an epiphany as myself and a group of folks from our Natural Heritage Commission and a few other agencies in the state all went to the 2017 National Native Seed Conference. And we realized like the opportunities that we were missing to do restoration in the state. And we saw some of the things that were going on in the rest of the country, and how far kind of behind we were in providing some of these local ecotype seed resources. And we decided to sort of pivot our program a little bit and start incorporating more perennial forbs and wildflowers into the program. And it really sort of pivoted our efforts to less of these big blocks of native warm season grasses. Not that we don't need those, we absolutely still need more of those for production for a lot of these different species. But we incorporated more pollinator friendly or pollinator plants and host plants and things like that. The things you saw in remnant prairies that we just didn't have sources for in Arkansas. So everything like milkweeds and liatris and rudbeckias and echinaceas and mints and all those sorts of things we all love about prairies. These were some of the things that we focused on. And we took an eco-regional approach. Took a long time to sort of figure out exactly where we're going to draw some of these lines. And this is just my working map. This is not the official map. I probably should have put the official your seed transfer zone map that we came up with. But we started working, not just Audubon, but lots of folks started working on Arkansas State Native Seed Plan, which was written, and I think we're still kind of in the implementation phase of that, trying to get that out there. But we decided, okay, these were the prairies in the different areas that we could kind of draw lines and say these were the areas that would have the most similar, eco-regional traits. And we broke up our seed collection into these 4 different ecoregions through the state. I would have loved to include that part in the middle and the south. We just did not have the reach at the time because there's some good prairies down there too. But we started doing seed collections from across the state, and this required sort of a Herculean effort with armies of volunteers and partners going out and promoting these seed collections and helping us do them across the state. And more than that, the partners providing the areas to collect seeds. So, state natural areas and places like that where we had these good remnant populations were what we targeted for our collection efforts. And like I said, we started engaging with partners and volunteers, and we collected off state natural areas, like I said, but also even private prairies, places that we could verify had never seen the plow and never been planted. And we worked with all kinds of folks, just general volunteer calls. We put out like our master naturalist groups. We had school groups. We had college kids come out and volunteer their time. And you can see there's Mr. Rudy, one of my technicians, right there in the middle bottom, standing next to a giant pile, I believe, is compass plant. And then behind him over there may actually be Baptisia. I'm not sure. We had a lot of seed to get started with. But if you've ever hand collected seed, which I'm sure a lot of you on your have, you can understand like that takes a lot of collecting. That's more than just a few folks going out and getting seed. So we took these seed resources and we started, once we kind of had that, we we started recruiting some more farmers. We had a little bit of experience with the first round of this through our native project of connecting with farmers through our NRCS contacts. This entire, just want to be clear, this entire program was funded through NRCS dollars and partner funds, folks that I believe TNC do some funding in there, and Natural Heritage Commission at least put match in there. But it's primarily funded through NRCS to meet the resource need for pollinator habitat, things like that on the landscape. And like I said, engage farmers in NRCS programs and get them growing, some additional crops on their farms that give them a little bit more flexibility and access to new markets. So we worked with a lot of partners to recruit farmers. One of the big ones was National Black Growers Association, especially in Eastern Arkansas. We found, we started recruiting farmers in East Arkansas, and we found lots of folks out there. And then we started to try to do the same thing in other parts of the state and realized, hey, people have different resources in different places based on the agriculture that's going on there. So we really wanted to get a lot of folks going in Northwest Arkansas, but you're hard pressed to find a combine up there, somebody that can actually combine native warm season grasses, because nobody owns a combine up there, because it's all smaller scale stuff or cattle. Same thing in Southwest Arkansas, more forestry, more cattle. So we had to kind of change it up, and that's where we went from kind of big open acres, 10-20 acre blocks of native warm season grasses, and then tailored it down to different farmers that were living in some of these other areas to some of these more small scale row crop, almost kind of the old truck patch, like a little 2 acre patch of native plants can produce quite a bit of seed. And I touched on the equipment need there. Farmers have some basic equipment, but they're not going to have specialized equipment, right? So one of the things that we had to do is come up with ways to have small enough equipment we can move it from farm to farm, and share equipment amongst our farmers. We have a small push combine, as you can see on the top left there. We have a flail vac harvester. We've got mobile threshing machines, seed dryers, all these sorts of things are things that we provide to the farmers for them to use to do this production on their farm. And a lot of that's very specialized and has to be either found or made. A lot of homemade equipment in our project. But our farmers really have done a great job of finding innovative ways to do this on their farms. I can't think of a single farmer that I have that does it the exact same way that another farmer does in another part of the state. They all take, using the same equipment, but maybe do it in different ways. And when there's a lot of hand harvesting that still goes on our plots. So once we got to the point where we had some plots established, and most of our plots are around 2 acres. I've got some folks that have up to about 8 or 10 acres of these forbs. And then, like I said, the folks with the native warm season grasses are kind of a whole different thing. They use combines and larger scale equipment to collect seed. But you can see there, Miss Tedford there in the top left, she's got her seed bag on and she's collecting echinacea. She's going to do that whether if she can't get a hold of my push combine for a couple weeks because it's on another farm, she's going to get out there with a pair of shears and she's going to collect seed. We have our small threshing machine there in the bottom center. That unit has been great for reducing the volumes. We were taking whole semi loads of seed over to Roundstone at one point and getting back like a pallet because we have a whole lot of stems and a whole lot of air that we were shipping. So that machine has really let us, save on shipping costs specifically because we have to move the seed over to them to be cleaned and certified and sold and all that stuff. Clean, tested, and sold rather. And then mobile seed drying. You can see in the bottom right there, we've got some mobile seed dryers that we built with little guidance from Roundstone Native Seed on how they sort of do some things so we can dry it in the sacks directly. And top right is our flail harvester. So we use that for all kinds of crops, everything from goldenrods and ironweeds and fluffy things to native warm season grasses and It doesn't do well on kind of the shatter prone things like your echinaceas and rudbeckias and things like that, but it does do well on your lighter seeded stuff. So long as you know how to run it and don't blow it all over the countryside by running it too fast. So once we've got this seed, it's all collected off of our farms. We've produced it to this point. Our farmers are trying to get it to market. They've got it all collected, dried, threshed, and then they bring it to us. And I have a gymnasium. So we call it our multi-purpose room for a reason. It's part of the season it is a classroom. Part of the season it is a rental space. Part of the season it is a seed warehouse. Part of the season it is a plant sale room. So it's quite literally a multi-purpose space. But we collect up all the seed from all the farmers. They bring it to us because we can store it in a dry, climate-controlled area where we're not going to get mold. We can control insects. We can keep mice out, things like that. These are all things that we hard learned lessons in lost seed that we got. You have to be able to store it someplace where you can keep it dry, keep the bugs and the mice out of it. Because man, highly sought after seeds, not just by people, but by all of the animals out there. They'll find a way to get into it. So we get it all stored up here, and then we ship it all to Roundstone Native Seed, where they finish doing the final conditioning, cleaning, and testing, and bag it up for our farmers, and it's available for purchase from Roundstone directly. Audubon is not in the middle of selling this seed. We're just supporting the farmers' efforts. So Roundstone is sort of a wholesale retail kind of agreement that they have between the farmers and Roundstone. And Roundstone sells all the seed for the farmers year to year. And this is all local ecotype seed. A couple thousand pounds a year probably goes on the market through our program that way. So building markets. So not just taking it to the seed company and saying, good luck, fellas, have fun. You know, we work with all the state agencies to promote, you know, these seeds for them, let them know they're out there. One of the things I've come to find about the seed industry is that a lot of the practitioners really don't know that these things are available. And seed companies are sometimes good about, you know, making it known that they're available, and sometimes not. And also, you know, spreading the message about the importance of local ecotype seed and helping people understand why you're probably going to have a better restoration if you're using local ecotype seed. The understanding behind, you know, why these things do better in the places that they're from versus moving them across the country. Some people understand it, some people really don't. I think you just purchase it off the shelf and what comes, and we hope it works. Not everybody at I'd say the restoration level has that level of understanding. And so just making that known, working with all of the folks that do these sort of restorations in the state has been something we focused a lot of time on. And we're now working with a large group of folks. And if you're familiar with the Southeast Grasslands Institute, they've helped put together a Southeast Native Seed Network that we participate in to help the Southeast generally find out what is being produced, where the needs are, how do we help get more of these local ecotype seeds onto the landscape. So we're participating in that right now. Our funding for this program has essentially come to an end as of August. We're not planning on backing out of it. We're going to try to keep going. I'm still working with our farmers. We're just looking for new funding at the moment. But yeah, so we've used, like I say, we still work with our farmers to keep advocating for the success, providing equipment, that sort of thing. But, you know, identifying the needs of some of these restoration projects that are going on and helping our farmers to meet those needs. Those are all things that we're still doing. And we've tried to engage our farmers in, you know, in show the practitioners that our farmers can produce these things. It's actually bringing bringing practitioners onto our farms to show them being grown, how they're grown, where they're from, all those sorts of things, so that they have a better connection to what the industry can really look like in their area. Let's see. So yeah, and I always like to end on this. This is my last slide here. I want to thank all of our partners in this. We couldn't have done any of this without their help and their advocacy and their support. And most of all, I want to thank our farmers, because it's a lot of work for me to go out and put all this together and get seed and get it on the farm, but I'm not the one that has to take the risk. I'm not the one who has to put in the hours to collect and deal with pests and molds and fungi and things like that they have to put up with eating their crops and things like that. I don't have to go do all that. They go out there every day and do that. And I've learned way more from them than I think they've taught me about growing this stuff in the places that they're at. So we have to support our farmers in this, and we have to make sure we set them up for success in these programs. So that's one of the things I'd like to leave you with. I'm not sure where I'm at on time here, but I'll let you go with that.
Great. Thank you so much, Jonathan. We're just at time. Phoebe, I'll have you go ahead and pull up your presentation, but one quick question for you, Jonathan. And you did mention the NRCS funding has gone away currently, but what program was it that was supporting this work? Was it the
So yeah, we've had multiple different NRCS funding streams in the past. We've had the 2501 program initially, and then we've had a conservation innovation grant, and then state and federal partners money as well. So over the years, it's sort of evolved and changed. But yeah, those are sort of the main funding streams that we were able to leverage.
Fantastic. And we can circle back to that again later too. Thanks
Okay.
so much, Jonathan. All right, Phoebe, it's all yours.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, as Lisa mentioned earlier, my name is Phoebe, and I am a research associate at Virginia Tech and the coordinator for the Southside Native Seed Project, which is what I will be speaking about today. And I'm following Jonathan today because this project, Southside Native Seed Project, was heavily influenced by the Audubon Delta Project and others, such as the Clifton Institutes Project in Northern Virginia and the Texas Native Seeds Project, among others. So the main goal of the Southside Native Seed Project is to improve the commercial availability of native Piedmont ecotype seed from grasslands in Virginia by partnering with historically underserved producers. So to this end, by the end of the 3 years that we have funding, we also have funding from USDA and NRCS. By the end of the 3 years that we have funding, we hope to introduce about 10 to 15 new Piedmont ecotypes to the commercial seed market. We also want to help farmers who are interested and growers who are interested in becoming native seed producers get established in our region. And lastly, with our partners who are doing similar work in the region, we hope to help build the foundation for sustainable native seed production infrastructure. So why are we focusing on Piedmont grasslands? For this project, they were focusing on them because they're very special ecosystems, and they were once extensive across the Piedmont ecoregion on the East Coast, but not much of their former extent remains. What does remain, at least in Virginia, is mainly restricted to power line rights of way and small roadside remnants. But despite the small and fragmented nature of these remnants, they harbor incredible biodiversity, especially floral diversity. They just in Virginia, these remnants house or are home to 52 globally rare state-listed plants, which is pretty incredible considering their small size. So they're very important ecosystems. They support a lot of animal life as well. But unfortunately, they do face threats such as further fragmentation, removal of fire, and other important disturbances from the landscape, and of course, invasive species pressure. And there are efforts underway to restore these ecosystems, but native seed supply, as everywhere in the US, is a major bottleneck for the restoration of Piedmont grasslands. And so the way this project really came about is that my boss, Leighton Reed, and Ryan Klupf and others on this project, they are restoration practitioners, and they were so they are restoring Piedmont grasslands in Virginia, and they were finding that they couldn't obtain all of the seed that they wanted for their restoration projects, which was affecting restoration outcomes. And indeed, a very small fraction of the known plant taxa in Piedmont grasslands is commercially available in bulk. So in the scale required for restoration, and an even smaller percentage of this is available from local sources. So a lot of times when people do restoration projects, particularly grassland restoration projects on the East Coast, they'll get seed from the Midwest, but that seed might not be the ideal source for a grassland restoration project in Southern Virginia, for example. And so our goal with this project is really to increase the restoration species pool for this region for local ecotype seed, and help restoration practitioners create more Piedmont grassland habitat and get more seed on the ground. Southside Virginia was chosen as the locale for this project for a couple of reasons. Southside is this group of counties highlighted here in this image in yellow. Historically, it was the center of tobacco production in Virginia. It's still a very rural area with a lot of farming communities, which we thought would be, or was thought would be, an ideal place to recruit farmers who might want to transition from tobacco to a different crop, namely native seed. In addition to that, Southside has some of the highest diversity grassland remnants in Virginia, including Difficult Creek Natural Area Preserve, which is shown here. It's a Virginia Natural Heritage Program managed site, and it's one of the most diverse grasslands in the state. And it's a wonderful seed source for our project. And there are other remnants around that are great seed sources as well. And then in addition to that, there is a concentration of large-scale restoration and revegetation projects in this region. So we knew that there were destinations for seed that we produced. And so what are the seed needs in the Virginia Piedmont? Public lands are could be a major source of demand. Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation owns manages several properties in the Virginia Piedmont, some of which they're converting back to different types of Piedmont grasslands. And they may need some native seed to do this. And so we hope that maybe we will be able to supply some of this seed in the future. And one of the most exciting projects is a recently acquired property that is now called Southside Savannah. It's about 4,000 acres. It's located next to Difficult Creek Natural Area Preserve, which I showed in the last slide. And because of it's also contiguous with other public lands. So what's exciting about this, in addition to the multiple restoration opportunities on the land, is that once restoration is underway there, it could be one of the largest and most diverse grasslands on the East Coast, which is pretty exciting. So hopefully we can supply some seed for that. In addition to that, there's a lot of solar going in Virginia, or there was when I created this slide last year. But so in some counties in Virginia, solar and other energy sites are required to use at least some proportion of native seeds in their planting. So we expect there to be some desire for native seed from them as well. The way this project is structured is that we at Virginia Tech, my coworker and some wonderful volunteers and student workers, we go out and we collect small collections of seed from wild populations around the southern half of the state in the Piedmont. We've grown some of those seeds, some of that seed out into greenhouse plugs, which we've put into a research and demonstration plot, which I'll talk about in a little while. And now we're actively recruiting growers from Southside to convert small parts of their land, so typically less than an acre, 2 small-scale increased plots. And then we will be growing out more plugs in the greenhouse from wild collected seed this season, and then helping these farmers that we recruit to plant these small-scale increased plots. And then we are asking that they manage these plots for about 2 years, so from next spring until the end of 2027, at which point we'll harvest the seed. And we're working with Roundstone as well, to Roundstone native seed to process and market that seed. And for those familiar with the native plant materials cycle, I think I got that name wrong, but this image is showing that it's from the BLM, and I've just highlighted the steps that, or the part of the cycle that we are involved in this project. So to select species for this project, well, we have a working list of target species for this project, and it was created based on a number of criteria, and this list is not exhaustive, but the most important criteria for us were we wanted to work with heliophytic forbs and graminoids, so sun-loving, open condition-loving species that were abundant across the Virginia Piedmont. So we're working with common species, not rare species. And we also wanted to add some new species that other growers in the area, such as Clifton Institute and North Carolina Botanical Garden, who are also growing Piedmont ecotype seed. We wanted to offer some new species that they were not growing, just to increase the species restoration pool again. And in addition to that, another really important criterion for selecting our species was we wanted species that were not going to be too difficult to produce for a new farmer. Many of our growers are going to be new to native seed production, and native seed production is not like typical row crop production in many cases. So we wanted to choose species that everyone would be able to handle. And these are just a few of our species. We have 20 or so collections or species in our collection. But these are the ones that ended up in our research and demonstration plot, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So I just wanted to give a couple of examples of those. And like I said, last year we went out with some wonderful volunteers and student workers at Virginia Tech and collected from wild populations, mainly power line cuts, as you can see. And we use modified seeds of success protocol to ensure that we're collecting ethically and not harming wild populations. And then last winter, we grew some of these seeds out into plugs, as I mentioned, and we did that with the help of a plant propagation class at Virginia Tech. So we've been able to involve students a lot in this work, which has been great, and we're hoping to do that more in the future. Now I'll just briefly touch on the research that we're conducting as part of this project. So we're doing we're doing an economic research piece in this project, and I'm not involved in it, but I'll try to represent it. So there's a natural resource economist, and she has a master's student, and they are trying to answer 2 main questions. Number one is, how economically feasible is it to produce native seeds currently in Virginia, especially for a historically underserved producer? And 2, what are the main socioeconomic drivers that would enable a producer to participate in native seed production in this region? And so to do that, they are currently conducting a cost-benefit analysis, and they're also going to be conducting surveys of producers in Southside. And I think this is really important research because we really want to lower the barriers to entry for native seed production for people who are interested in becoming native seed producers. And so I think this research will really inform that. In addition to that, we're conducting a field trial looking at the impacts of a commercially available arbuscular mycorrhizal fungal inoculum mix on the growth, phenology, and seed production in 5 of our target species. We began that this spring, and so far we haven't seen any differences in growth metrics between inoculated and control plants, but we're going to continue collecting data through the season and the next And then we're also hoping to expand on this research and potentially look at some fertilizer treatments in new plots. And there's a good reason for that, which is that we accidentally over-fertilized our plots, and this affected some species more than others. This is showing, for those familiar with the species, Andropogon or Anathorum gyrans, which is typically a very short-statured grass, but we grew some real behemoths in our plots, and we'll be looking at the seed production to see how that affects that. But yeah, so in the future, we might want to do a couple of trials looking at different rates of fertilizer to try to hone in on the best rates for some of these species that for which there's no published literature or haven't been grown before. So that was an important lesson. Another one is that so for anyone who's interested in starting a similar project or program or working with farmers in a similar capacity, it's important to keep in mind, as Jonathan said, that native seed production is kind of different from traditional row crop production. It's labor intensive, it's time intensive, it's the startup costs are relatively high, and it's a little bit can be riskier than other forms of production. So these are good things to keep in mind when looking for partners in this work, producer partners. And what I've learned is that we at Virginia Tech and in this project just have to be prepared to offer a lot of support and flexibility to the producers and try to meet them where they are. Because again, we just want to get more people growing native seed and more native seed on the landscape. So we're trying to lower barriers to entry wherever we can. And then lastly, site prep is key for this work for our plots, or if you're looking to putting in a plot with rows and alleys, for example, it's good to consider the equipment that you have. This is something I've learned from Roundstone and others. And so if you have a mower, for example, space out your rows and alleys so that it can accommodate that specific mower. That will save you a lot of time on the back end. And another lesson I might be going over, I'm not sure, but is just lean on the people who are already doing this work. So there are lots of people in this call I know that I have pestered many times for advice, and that advice has been invaluable, and I couldn't have done this project without it. So thanks for that. And yeah, be sure to, other people are doing this work, so be sure to reach out to them with questions. And with that, I would like to thank all these people, especially the Natural Areas Association, for inviting us to do this webinar, and NRCS for funding the work, and also Roundstone for being a great partner in this. And then, is there time for questions?
Hi, Phoebe. Yep, we have another minute or two. If anybody has a question for Phoebe, please go ahead and post it. In the meantime, I have a question. I know that this project, and you may have mentioned it at the beginning too, was funded through NRCS. And I wondered, and it looks to me like a ton of in-kind contribution to the, lending to the financial success of this project. Were there any other funding sources at the outset besides NRCS that's helped to get this project off the ground?
Not that I'm aware of. I think Ryan is in this call, so maybe he can chime in if I'm wrong about that, but I'm fairly sure that it's all NRCS money.
Wonderful. And do you know, or maybe Ryan, if you could offer it up in chat, the program, the NRCS program. This kind of goes back to the question for Jonathan, the NRCS program that was utilized or apply,
Yeah, I can.
Program that funded this project.
That one is, I believe, Equity and Conservation Outreach.
Okay. Okay, great. Fantastic. Okay, it looks like I do see one question, and we do have another 2 minutes. Yeah, folks, just a reminder, please put your questions over in Q&A so I don't miss them over here in chat. Let's see. Are you mixing seeds from different populations of the same species, and how do you track that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I am ultimately probably going to do, we did that for the demonstration plot, and we'll probably do that for like when we grow plugs for the farmers as well. But initially I keep the populations separate. So I kept them separate until I went to put them into like cold stratification before planting. There are some good reasons to keep them separate. But for the purposes of our project, I think we want as much genetic diversity as possible in the plug products that we're giving to these farmers and in the seed that comes out of these plots. So I'm trying to get as many populations represented in the seed collections as possible. And yeah, mixing them.
Fantastic. Great. Okay, we'll go ahead, Phoebe. We do have several other questions that have come in for you, and hopefully folks can get them out of chat and over into Q&A. But let's hold off. We'll circle back and get these questions to you. There may be one or two you can answer
Sure.
after you're done here. But thank you so much. All right, everybody. Great. Let's go ahead and hear from our next presenter, Jerod Huebner, and we'll keep going here.
Okay, my name is Jerod Huebner, Director of Prairie Management for the Missouri Prairie Foundation. This presentation is going to be a little bit different than the others. So we are producing seed, but it's in a little bit different fashion. It's primarily on remnant prairie sites. Unplowed, high quality, high diversity remnant prairies throughout the state of Missouri. And this was already mentioned, but just to give you an overview of our site locations throughout the state. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit conservation group in the state of Missouri and registered in surrounding states. Most of our sites lie south of the Missouri River, which would be unglaciated. We have just a couple north of the river, and those are primarily Loess Hill prairies, which is a different prairie type. There's not a lot of Loess Hill prairie, just a couple hundred acres in the entire state. So it's basically the steep bluff side of the Missouri River. And then we've recently started acquiring some rare sand prairie types, which are in the boot heel of Missouri, you can see down there. And those would be a little bit closer to like coastal prairies in the southeast. So trying to get a representative of every prairie type here in the state. The mission of the Missouri Prairie Foundation is to protect and restore prairie and other native grasslands. So we do this through acquisition, management, education, and research. We also have a couple of programs that are housed within the Prairie Foundation. One is called the Grow Native program, and the other is the Missouri Invasive Plant Council. So the Grow Native program is more of a outreach and education program, and the Invasive Plant Council is similar and focuses on control and eradication of invasive plants in the state of Missouri. So MPF, our main focus is the protection and management of our high quality, those 5,000 acres of prairie that I mentioned. So seed collection plays a really important role in our protection of these sites. A lot of our prairies, when we purchase them, say if we have a 400 acre site, maybe only 100 acres of that is remnant prairie. And so to protect that remnant prairie, we have to essentially manage all of the land around it, whether it's from, neighboring crop fields, herbicide drift, invasion of invasive species, things like that. We try to buffer our remnants with prairie plantings. This not only benefits the plants, but also all of the animals that live on our prairie. So various pollinators, grassland birds, things like that. So buffering these sites with the seed that we collect is very important to our mission. Our seed collection that we conduct is primarily by hand collection and a small amount of mechanized collection. Jonathan mentioned some of the stuff that I'll talk about, but ours is a little bit unique in the fact that we're conducting this and contracting this out, and making it commercially available to private citizens for expansion of grassland habitat in the state. So our hand collection focuses primarily on early season short species. So the things that grow in March, April, and May that are covered up by grasses by the time you could get equipment over to collect them. Things like prairie violets, hyacinth, all of wood betony, lousewort, things like that. So that's what we focus our hand collection on, and oftentimes those are the species that we cannot get commercially, and so it's really important for us to have those in our seed mixes when we're doing a reconstruction or restoration. So we have to pretty much do a lot of that in-house by hand. A lot of the mid and late season species, that's where the flail vac harvester comes in to play. And so starting in early to mid July, we'll focus on a lot of sedges. They'll mature before a lot of other things come into play. And then, as soon as echinacea, liatris, things like that are mature, then we move on to those kind of, I guess you call mid to late summer and early fall species. The other thing that we do with the commercial contractors is we work with them kind of on the side of their contracts, and we'll talk about that in a second, to kind of collect where they're not collecting, and I'll talk a little bit more about why we do that. So just a couple of photos. You've seen the picture of the flail vac harvester. If you're not familiar with that, it's essentially a big rotating broom that just sucks in any material that you run it over with the tractor bucket there in the top right photo. And so you see all of the stem material, and Jonathan mentioned this, you get a lot of stem, a lot of leaf material, a lot of fluff that is not actually viable seed or marketable seed. For our purposes and our plantings, we don't care about that. We run everything through the hammer mill you see in the center there. It chops it up into a fine kind of powder. And then we run it through what's called a vicon or a pendulum seeder on the top left photo there. And so we're spreading all of that material back out on these reconstruction sites. So the photo in the background there is just a soybean field we'd prepped for multiple years. It was fescue and other invasive things. And so soybeans are a great way to prep a site like that. It's not me just spraying glyphosate on the site repeatedly. There's actually something in the soil during that time period. So that is kind of how we conduct our restorations and reconstructions. And it's working out really well for us. The commercial side of things is where we've ran into some issues. As I mentioned, a big portion of our sites are really highly diverse, high quality remnant prairie sites. And so we want to have this seed for ourselves. We want to make this seed available to private individuals that are doing CRP plantings or other NRCS programs. But we can't let that collection come at the cost of the degradation of our native prairie remnants. And so pre-2015, I started this position in 2015. Seed collection was unlimited, and we only, for decades, had been using one vendor throughout the state. And so part of the Grow Native program that is housed under MPF, we have Grow Native professional members, which are somewhat endorsed by us. They're trusted individuals that know their species. They can certify species were collected from a certain geography within the state of Missouri or surrounding states. And so we put out those individuals' contact information for the public. And so we thought that it was prudent to offer the potential to harvest on our sites to all Grow Native professional members. And since then, we've had about 3 or 4 different commercial contractors bid on our seed collection on our prairie remnants. And so that was working out really well. And we actually revised our seed collection specs in 2021. And I will go through that here next. So this grid or this table that you see here is basically a grid sampling result on one of our sites, in particular Linden's Prairie. You can see Golden Prairie above that. Golden Prairie is a designated national natural landmark, also a state natural area. Total 600 acres there, and Linden's Prairie is 176 acres, and then you've got Coin Prairie, which is in a complex of 320 acres total now. So pretty sizable prairie remnant complexes in Missouri in terms of the remaining prairie that's left in the state. The column you want to pay attention to is the native C column. So basically that is an average score of all of the plants on the site. So if you're not familiar with a coefficient of conservatism, basically a plant is given a value from 0 to 10, 10 being more conservative or potentially more rare or more reliant on a high quality ecosystem. And so we use these values to grade our sites basically for this purpose right here. But also say we were looking at purchasing three prairies, but only had the resources to purchase one of them, the native C value would be a really good grading tool to decide which one, has the rarest resources on it, which one needs protected the most. So it's a really useful tool. And these, you can see over here on Golden, we were 7 years apart on our sampling, 2013 to 2020. Linden's, we had 5 years apart, we found 5 years is kind of a good number. It gives us about 2 burn cycles between samplings, and it doesn't allow too much time to lapse in a prairie ecosystem. So things could change drastically in a 10-year time period, for instance. But if you look at the Linden's prairie plots, you see plot 1 stayed 4.6 average C value. Plot 2 actually went up 0.1, and those 0.1 is a fairly minor change. And then you look at plot 3, it went down 0.3 points, and that's a fairly drastic change. So a value of 5, there's a handful of prairies in the entire state of Missouri that grade out at a average 5 score. 5 is the best of the best. Really rare, lots of very conservative species, and not a lot of degradation on the site. You get under 4, and it's just your kind of average prairie. So you see the new plots. This was a prairie we just purchased, and you see it's down at 4.1. It had quite a bit of fescue encroachment, a fair amount of invasive species that had been hayed for decades. And so we would expect that 4.1 on the new plots on the bottom to increase over time through killing the fescue, things like that. But getting back to Linden's, that 4.7, that 0.3 drop really was reason for concern. And we kind of spent quite a bit of time actually trying to figure out what was going on. I stumbled upon this map after the individuals that were doing the plot sampling, the grid sampling for us, pointed out they noticed the area had been trampled pretty heavily. And so it made me think seed collection after going out on the site and looking at it. It obviously appeared very trampled. And so you can see all of these tire tracks. And basically that is either a combine or a big tractor flailback harvester. This is the southern half, essentially, of a 176 acre site. So there's very little of that prairie that was left untrampled and uncollected. They were collecting on it numerous times, and you can actually see kind of in the east central portion of the photo, just up from the scale bar, there's a big area that's just completely flattened. That was an area where there were some tarps laid out and seed was being stored until it was loaded onto trailers and hauled off site. And so that seed might have been stored on tarps for maybe a few days at a time if the weather was dry. And so it really stood out that this is most likely what is happening. This is why this site was slowly degrading over 5 years, regardless of all the other management we were doing. So, we wanted seed production. We do get some revenue from that, although it's not much. We need the seed for our own plantings. We want to, as part of our mission, provide it to the public, but it can't come at the cost of the loss of biodiversity on a site that has over 200 native species on it. So, through various meetings internally and externally, we essentially came up with some changes to our commercial harvesting that would meet all of our needs. We could still make quite a bit of seed available. We would have the seed that we needed for our restorations and reconstructions, but we're also protecting the most important part of our mission, which is our prairie remnants. So I'll highlight some of the most important changes here. Basically, this is a page out of the contract here. So we started providing lists of species of conservation concern. So anything that's listed in the state of Missouri by the state or federal government as a threatened or endangered species that goes on there. We provide those locations of those plant populations to the commercial harvesters, and they essentially need to stay out of those areas during their collection. So things like Mead's milkweed, we may have a population of 10 plants on a site, but we don't want to just go trample them every year. So that was really important in this change. And then when you get down to the remnant and original prairies in bold, as I mentioned before, the commercial collection was essentially open to the entirety of the site, the entirety of the seed amount, whenever, however they wanted to collect it. And so we decided that was just way too much trampling of our sites. We also took into account not only the plants, as I mentioned before, but the fauna that's on these sites. So a lot of pollinators, a lot of those pollinators are really rare or restricted to prairie remnants in the state of Missouri. And the burn units are going to provide the largest floral resource on the site. So if you ever go out on a prairie, it's obvious where the burn unit is in the middle of the growing season. It's where most of the flowers are growing. And so we don't want to go strip all those floral resources or all those seed resources, which the birds need, strip them right off and then just have a bare plant. That kind of negates, part of the reason of burning these sites. And so we limit that to 50% of the most recently burned unit and 50% of the unburned unit. So in any given season on 176 acres, we're only burning, 85 acres or collecting 85 acres of that. So we're not trampling half of that site each season. Reconstructions, in our mind, are just less valuable from a standpoint of the rarity of these remnants, and so we allowed a little bit more collection, up to 75% of the reconstructed area, and then hand collection is not limited on those sites. Just based on the map that I showed, or the aerial photo I showed you guys, and also just observational notes as we were doing prescribed burns, we also came across quite a few box turtles that had been smashed. And I don't know whether it was due to the seed collection or just our management through burning with use of ATVs, things like that. But that also played into this limiting or giving refuge to half of the site in a given year. Ornate box turtles are really abundant on our grasslands here in Missouri, and they're fairly long-lived. It takes them around 10 years or so to be sexually reproductive. And so if we're killing several of those in a given year, it's pretty detrimental to a population like that. So we limited that driving to the seed collection areas only in that given season. Additionally, on small remnants, so we have remnants all the way down to 3/4 of an acre. There's one in the city of Joplin, where I live. It's actually part of the Joplin Park system now, that MPF acquired several years back. It's only 3/4 of an acre in size. It actually hosts a species of bee that's been found nowhere else in the state of Missouri. So really vital to the diversity of the prairies overall in the state of Missouri. Very worth protecting, and So we're limiting that collection on those small sites to hand collection only. We've got other sites that are 19, 15, 18 acres in size. And just really any amount of trampling on those sites could be detrimental to a single species like that bee I mentioned. And then just one step further, the equipment parking and storage. So we don't want, trucks, trailers, tractors, all of that just out parked in the center of a really high quality remnant. So we limited that trampling and storage to the perimeters, or say an area in the center of the prairie that used to be covered in oak trees, things like that. Areas that we determined to be degraded and can handle the additional disturbance that the parking and the storage puts on a site. And just to show kind of the rebound of that plot 3 from Linden's Prairie in 2022, we had that resample just to see if 2 years of rest and a burn cycle would change the 0.3% or 0.3 drop in native C value. It did bounce back to 4.9. So a substantial jump back. We're 0.1 from where we were originally, which is within just normal changes. And so it looks like we're back on track and moving in the right direction to obtaining our goals of seed collection, but also protecting these valuable remnants. So this is the site. This is Linden's Prairie. It's in the southwest part of Missouri. Really close to most of our remnants in the state. As I mentioned, I think it has around 40 species of conservation concern, over 200 native species on the prairie. You can just see the diversity there. That's actually my daughter. When I started with the Prairie Foundation a little over 10 years ago, she was not born yet, and I just immediately fell in love with this site. It's probably got the most echinacea and bee balm just solid across the site of any of our prairies. It's loaded with goat's rue and lead plant, and a lot of our sites have one or the other and not an abundance of both. It's been noted as having one of the largest populations of royal catchfly in the state of Missouri, or maybe anywhere in the U.S. And so just incredible diversity, and I found it fitting to name our daughter after this site, and that's her on the left or on the right there. So I'll go through these photos real quick so you can see the bean field top right. A lot of times that's what we're reconstructing, or it may be a fescue field. We never totally reconstruct something unless we know it's been plowed in the past. So if it's just a degraded cattle pasture or a site that was overtaken by trees, we utilize a lot of different resources, whether it's aerial photos, past cropping records, things like that, to determine that there is no real native resource left before we go and do a preparation technique like putting in soybeans. So we don't want to take away from the site, but we want to prep it in the best way possible. You can see that fluffy, clumpy seed in the center there on the tarp. That's a lot of our flailback mix. And we'll also purchase seed from the commercial harvesters there that you can see bagged and boxed up. And we mix that in with our seed that we collect in-house and broadcast on our sites. So that's the end, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Jerod. We're going to go ahead and move on to our final speaker and hopefully salvage a little time at the end there for everybody's questions. There is one that you might be able to answer after you're done. So Sarah, you're on for our final wrap. Thanks so much, Jerod.
Thank you. So my name is Sarah Beier. I am the seed team coordinator for Kansas City WildLands. Today, I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit about some of the ways that our program differs from others that you've heard, and talk a little bit about our structure and kind of where we are in our seed collection and production efforts and where we're going next. Kansas City WildLands is a program of Bridging the Gap. Bridging the Gap is Kansas City's oldest and largest environmental nonprofit. The other work that BTG does covers urban forestry, recycling initiatives, energy and water efficiency. So we're just one part of this larger nonprofit. WildLands was established with the recognition that we had all of these little urban remnants throughout the Kansas City area, both on the Kansas side and Missouri side, that were in a variety of hands. They're all public land. But that there was a need to be able to share resources, to share knowledge, and just a recognition that municipalities may vary from one to the next and from election to the next and year to year in terms of their ability and commitment to continuing to steward these areas. So that was in 2001, and we've been working on our sites since then. We currently have 18 different sites throughout the Kansas City metro for a total of a little over 1,300 acres. We have 9 prairies within that group, a couple of glades and 7 woodlands and riparian areas. Our smallest site is around 3 acres, and then our largest site remnant-wise is about 100 acres or so. So we've got a wide mix there, but in the grand scheme of things, we're dealing with some really small spaces. And with that comes some urban conservation challenges. Like I said, these are really small remnants, so the edge pressure that we face is tremendous. A lot of them are like plopped right in the middle of neighborhoods where you've got people, you know, going out today and buying winter creeper and putting it in their garden. So we have a lot of that edge pressure for invasive species and just a lot of pressure on these remnants. Like I said, parks departments may vary in their ability to support restoration goals, a lack of prescribed fire on our urban sites, and of course, public use and misuse. We also, though, have a lot of advantages that can come with that as well, that I'll talk about in a minute. So this yellow polygon at the bottom of your screen is one of our glade sites, Rocky Point Glade. It's in Swope Park, which is an urban park located in the middle of Kansas City. And so you can see 435 off to the right is one of our main transportation thoroughfares, and up here at the top is the Kansas City Zoo. So when we burn Rocky Point Glade, our prescription plan not only includes prescription to make sure that we're not smoking out the 435 highway, but also we have an asthmatic hippo at the zoo and we don't want to exacerbate her issues. So really some unique challenges come with this. But also a lot of advantages, as I said. So this is Rocky Point Glade. These photos are taken just about a 20-minute drive from downtown. So some of our advantages, these small remnants can be a lot of times managed with manual means that we can remove invasive species by hand. The urban remnants being distributed throughout the city help reduce noise, air, and water pollution for their neighbors. And then you have the advantage of having accessible and approachable nature just right in town for a lot of folks. Among the things that WildLands does for these remnants and for our partners, we do a lot of invasive species removal. We assist with prescribed fire, so we can provide volunteers and support for municipalities that otherwise might not be able to conduct burns. We do surveys and community science projects. And we have our Wildlands Seed team. This is a team of individuals that has been going for about 24 years now. In 2024, we had 629 individual volunteers give their time to seed collection. That was a total of about 1,800 volunteer hours. So most of our volunteers come for just 1 or 2 work days per year. The opportunities to volunteer are publicized through our partnerships with the master naturalist groups on both the Missouri and Kansas side, as well as on our website, on our social media, through Bridging the Gaps newsletter and WildLands program specific newsletter. And then I have a distribution list that I maintain of folks who have said that they're interested in receiving notification when those opportunities are available. So we have a lot of folks that just come a couple of times a year, and then we have a core group of 20 or 30 people who I see every week throughout the season, if not more. Last year, we collected a total of 220 species. You can see these shelves here starting to fill up. This is probably late summer last year with seeds from all of our sites. We estimate that after cleaning, we were able to distribute 339 pounds of pure live seed to our municipal partners. All of our seed comes from public land, and all of it goes back down onto public land. Usually this is used for creating new habitat. We also provide a mix that our partners use where they have removed honeysuckle and that we use on our honeysuckle workday sites as well to help to fill in that area and prevent reestablishment of the invasive species. We estimate that our total seed production last year was approximately $63,000 in value. However, that is only for seeds for which we can find a market value. Approximately a third of what we collect is not available commercially. In addition, everything that we're collecting is local ecotype to Kansas City. And so these are seeds that essentially, with genetics that are essentially available nowhere else to our partners. So the true value is really much, much more than that. So I guess I was going to say our partners also spend, this is a dent in what they need as far as seed demand locally in the area, but they are also spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on seed from throughout the Midwest that comes from farther afield. So one of our goals over the next few years is to try to close that gap a little bit. And so some of the ways that we intend to do that, some of our strengths that will help us get there. WildLands works on a really successful volunteer workday model where we engage people in the stewardship of the land. And we have, as I said, the vast majority of our seed is collected by volunteers, collected by hand. Our collection season runs May through sometimes into December. And we have retirees, we have master naturalists, we have school groups, we have a couple of professors in the area that require for their environmental science or their biology groups or classes that they come out on their own time and spend a work day with us and do a little write-up about what they learned. So we see volunteers coming from a wide variety of walks of life. And we're working to expand the type of people that are coming out. We're working to expand our reach and to reach more new volunteers and improve our stewardship so that they stay with us. Among our Rockstar volunteers are a handful of site monitors. So each of our 18 sites, most of them, I guess, have a site monitor, either one or two folks who adopt a site. They visit weekly, some of them visit more than that, and they do a lot of individual seed collection. Sometimes they lead our seed collection work days, and they are communicating with us about seed readiness and about sometimes other conditions found on site. Like I said, we have some public use and misuse issues occasionally in our parks, and sometimes our seed monitors our site monitors are the first ones to let us know about that so we can communicate that to our partner. So our facility, this is our WildLands seed barn, heavy on the air quotes. I had somebody tell me recently that I should tell folks we have a seed castle, not a seed barn. This was not built to be a barn necessarily, but it is now dedicated seed processing and storage space that is provided by our partner at Johnson County Parks and Rec. We have cleaning equipment here that is available to be shared with regional partners. And this is where we do all of our storage and processing. This are just a couple of the equipment that we have. This is Sir Mix-a-Lot on the left, which we've used to mix smaller batches of seed for distribution. And then we have our hammer mill on the right here that is used to break up some of those larger seeds. Jerod talked about they put the majority of their bulk species through the hammer mill just in order to get them to a state where they can be spread. We do tend to put just more of our heavier, harder seed heads through this. So things like rattlesnake master, echinacea are going through here, as well as things like Monarda, our like bee balm, and our mountain mints go through here as well, just because they have a lot of air in them, and also are tend to be in kind of larger clumpy things that want to stick together. So we run them through here to get them to a smaller size as well. My sort of rule of thumb as we are doing our cleaning is that we want to get things as clean as possible with a reasonable amount of effort. But at the end of the day, we basically just need to get things clean enough to be able to run them so that our partners can run them through their planting equipment. So we are not in any way getting things as clean as you would for a commercial situation, although we may be looking at going in that direction in the future as well. So we're kind of trying to straddle the line, I guess, in terms of how clean we are getting things. We do also have this antique clipper machine, which hasn't seen a lot of use, but is something that we are looking to rehab. It needs some love, particularly some of the screens have gotten pretty damaged over the years. When it came to us, was already in a little bit of sad shape. So we'd love to get this available for use to be able to have that as well. Another strength that we have is our really strong partnerships. Over the last couple of decades, we have strong partnerships with our land managers, parks departments on both sides of the state line, as well as the state conservation agencies. And our support for those programs is continuous. And I think that's one of the things that has really endeared folks in the region to WildLands, is that we have had that continuity of expertise and support to be able to weather some of those changes and to still bring volunteers out to the land during those periods of some uncertainty. Lessons learned over the past 25 years. So having a dedicated coordinator, the person in my position, really helps with a variety of things. So for the first 16 years, this effort was entirely volunteer-led. And then in 2016, grant funding provided for some part-time staff support for the first time through a monarch conservation grant. And that facilitated some centralized coordination. The person in the role then was able to double the collection in that year compared to previous years. And so really, really had a huge effect on the program's impact. We've also learned through some different approaches to volunteer training. We, for a couple of years, tried to do some like seed team training classes where folks came for a few sessions. They were provided with resources and tools and field guides. And the hope was that they would then continue to return to collect seed. And not many of them did, at least not enough to make up for, provide a good return on the investment of time and resources that went into that training. And so volunteer mentoring has been a lot more effective, both in some like one-on-one mentoring between coordinator and volunteer. We also have new site monitors, mentoring with existing site monitors. So they're doing a lot of one-on-one, showing them around their sites, talking to them about how to ID different species, how to tell if a particular species seed is ready. And then our efforts are ongoing to improve that volunteer recruitment and stewardship and recognition. So we've got also our volunteers during our seed collections. We usually have a really good mix of both seed team veterans, some folks who have been around, 10 years or even since the very beginning, along with folks for whom it is their first day. So we make an effort to try to connect those two groups together because our veteran volunteers love nothing more than to share that prairie love with new people. So that has been really effective in helping people feel comfortable and seeing them return to our program. And then another lesson that we've learned is the need for some more targeted collection. So I like to describe some of our previous seasons as like playing seed Pokemon, gotta catch them all. Which is fun. And I am just as competitive as the next person, maybe a little bit more. But at the end of the day, we need to look at what our land managers need and what do they want. And so we've started surveying our partners prior to our seed collection season to learn what their needs are, what are the projects that they have planned for next year. And then we have our land managers invited on site to our barn for seed mixing days. So they are there as we're putting together the mixes for their projects. So they're able to have input at that phase as well. And just trying to get a little bit more intentional, a little bit more thoughtful about our seed mix design and to target our efforts a little bit more toward kind of what are the things that that are rare, that are not available through commercial means, so that we're really the only chance that our land managers have to obtain that species, and where are our workhorse species that we can, go out with a school group and, show them here's the one species we're collecting today, collect a lot, and then it will all be in demand and useful for our land managers as well. The other thing that I've been working on the last couple of years is some data standardization. So previously, everything was just typed into an Excel sheet. So we had difficulty when it came time to try to crunch the numbers where you would have typos or misspellings or multiple different common names being used. And so I started a seed worksheet that has basically all you have to do is type in the abbreviation for the species, and all of the rest of this information automatically is pulled from a master list. And then there's various variations of that spreadsheet that also we use as we are processing that pull in the market price per ounce so that we can have a rough idea of where we are in terms of the value that we're providing to our partners. Among our current areas of focus are improvements in storage and processing methods. Like I said earlier, rodents are definitely a big demand and consumers of seed, and our barn, even though it is maybe a step up from the average barn, is susceptible to mice, and so we've had that problem ongoing in the past and have not been allowed to get a cat. I don't know why, but we are working toward actually cleaning our seed earlier in the season. Previously, as you saw in that photo where everything was just stacked on the shelves, everything would go on the shelf, and then cleaning would only happen basically after all seed collections are done for the year. So cleaning in like December, January, and having some really big work days and a lot of seed to get through. And we have turned that on its head a little bit, where we are aiming to clean seeds within a couple of weeks to a month after they are collected. So they do have some time to sit. We can spread them out to dry a bit if necessary in order to get them dry enough to clean. And then once seeds are cleaned, we're doing some drying with silica gel in a in a kind of a rudimentary seed drying rig that consists of a 55-gallon barrel with silica beads in the bottom, and then seeds hanging above it to dry, so that we can ultimately get those things into airtight storage without having to worry about mold becoming an issue. So that's one of the biggest changes that we've made this year. And then we are also implementing alongside that viability and germination testing with a local college to inform those changes and help evaluate their effectiveness. So they have asked us to just send them samples of whatever we would like, and they are working through figuring out some germination rates for species in the area, both things that are really common, as well as some more rare species, and some things with some suspected low fecundity values. So I'm trying to kind of crack those nuts, as it were. And then, as I said before, just kind of bringing more attention to our mixes and how we're putting those together. One of my biggest focuses is on increasing our volunteer base. So we're offering unique volunteer experiences. The most successful has been our conservation crawl this year, where it's kind of like a little sampler. People get to come out and do a couple of different wildlands activities. So that might mean that they do like some invasive species removal and then collect seed with us. Or maybe they're going to do some seed collection and processing, or maybe we'll do a site survey and teach everybody how to use INAT and try to get more observations into our projects, and then do some, invasive species removal or what have you. And then we go for either coffee or a beer at locally owned places after that. So those have been really popular. Had great conversations with everybody in that hour or so after the work is done. And we've had people returning then when that's been their first exposure to us to keep coming back and doing some additional volunteering. So also looking to recruit the next generation of leadership volunteers. A lot of our site monitors are seed team veterans, and a lot of them are retirees. And we just have that awareness that they're not going to be able to do this forever, and that we do need to have folks who are positioned to be able to step into those roles when the time comes for them to step back from this work. So really big focus on a really good, solid volunteer culture that I came into, and then trying to expose new people to that volunteer culture. The other thing that we are involved in is the Kansas City area regional seed collaboration, where just looking at different ways that we can all cooperate and collaborate to increase the supply and the affordability of local ecotype native seed. We have also done some interfacing with a broader Midwest seed collaboration that's being headed up out of the Field Museum. So been really interesting to be engaged in those conversations, and we're excited to see where that goes next. And I think we have time for questions left.
Sorry, I was muted.
Yeah, there you go.
Folks, thank you, Sarah, very much. Folks, we are well beyond our time right now. And Maura has been posting in chat that the speakers have agreed to hang around for a few minutes. I'm just going to pick a few select questions. Thanks to the presenters who are answering questions as you can, especially those that are, kind of specific. Sarah, there's one in there for you maybe that you can take care of while I ask. I'll ask this one question. This came up at the very beginning as part of Jonathan's presentation, but I think it's a great question for anybody to chime in from the presenter group too. And this is sort of a really important question. What is the distance threshold in miles or radius for seeds to be considered a local ecotype? And at what point do they fall outside of that classification? I don't know, Jonathan, if you wanted to hit that. That question came up as part of your presentation, but anybody, if all the presenters could just go ahead and turn on their videos, that'd be great. Who wants to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I can take a shot at that. I mean, that is a I had a really concise answer to that question, I'm sure everybody would appreciate it, but I don't. So for us, we delineated that, like I said, in our kind of our state seed plan. We decided, okay, if we're going to call it a local ecotype to the Ozarks, it's going to fall within this. It'll be collected within X area. Or if it's going to be a local ecotype to the Blacklands in Southwest Arkansas, it's going to be in this area. So we put delineations on that of like kind of where it could be sourced from to be considered that. That being said, I think it really comes down to your goals and what you're trying to like, what's your restoration look like? Are you restoring a really high quality, really rare site? Then your radius is going to be probably a lot smaller. If you're trying to do like a, you know, what we call maybe like a more like a prairie construction, where you're not coming from a remnant prairie, you're coming from something that's, you know, highly degraded, a former ag field or something like that. You're just trying to get the best representation you can. You're looking more west and east. You're looking for something that's, going west and east is probably less important than going north and south in that case, right? So you don't want something that's sourced way further north from you or way further south from you, but you could probably get away with being a little bit further west to east just with our climate. And I'm speaking specifically in the east where I'm at, can kind of change depending on where you're at. I mean, it's a complicated question. Like I said, like it depends on your outcomes, what you're looking for, and to just where you are and about how far you can go. So, take into consideration climate, take into consideration your soils, take into consideration all the things that you can, and really figure out what is it. That's the best answer I can give you.
Great. Thank you. Does anybody else have any wisdom to offer there? Okay, great. Any thoughts? This is a second question. Any thoughts on encouraging the adoptions of producing the harder to grow specialized seeds? These seeds may be harder to grow, but they're also often in high demand. How can we get producers over the initial hurdles? I'm not sure that, Jonathan, that may have come in for you or Phoebe.
I think
yeah,
what we ran into in Missouri, essentially our commercial harvesters collect what is marketable in a large quantity. And so if they're collecting or growing out prairie violets or, putting in production plots of prairie violets, the typical landowner or entity that's going to do a reconstruction or restoration isn't going to pay $5,000 for a pound of prairie violets. Now, prairie violets are very tiny. A pound of that seed would be a lot of seeds, maybe in the hundreds of thousands of seeds. But most people aren't going to pay that. And so that's what it costs them to grow that. So why are they going to spend that when they can produce, hundreds of pounds of another species and easily sell that other species? So that's the hurdle for us is essentially, and I think Jonathan essentially did this in their program. We would have to basically speak for all the seed that is produced or not produced. We would have to take the risk out of it for the growers or producers to convince them to start growing those hard to grow or hard to produce species.
Yeah, that's one of the things we've done in our program is actually, we're providing them with seed materials. We're covering the cost of installing the irrigation and the drip tape and the plastic mulch, all those sorts of things. So we take a lot of that risk out. So that helps get some of those things going. But I'll just tell you, I mean, there's a reason a lot of things aren't commercially, and it's not because they don't want them out there. It's just some of these plants just are not conducive to commercial production. And I don't know what to do about that on a lot of stuff. There's certainly ways that we can help on some of it and some of these species, but some of the things are just not very conducive to commercial production. On the backhand of that, I think we have to also be realistic about our expectations. We talk a lot about desire versus demand. There's a lot of things that we would love to see on the landscape that, to Jerod's point, we're just never going to hit a price point that is realistic that anybody's going to pay for. Everybody wants something that was grown in their county, and they want 300 species, and they want it today. Like, that's all, those are great desires, but there's a very unrealistic demand for a producer to hit. So we have to kind of temper our expectations a little bit on what is commercially available, just based on the realities of the biology of those species.
Thank you for that. I just want to say, before I thank each of our speakers, there are a few questions that are still left standing, but I would highly encourage you. We will make sure that you have everybody's contact information. Our presenters have been so gracious with their time and with offering themselves to you to ask questions and follow up via email or phone call. And, you know, I think Phoebe said it, you've all alluded to it, that, you know, these programs don't just develop in isolation of one another. You know, these folks that you see here on the screen have been talking to one another over time and learning from one another, and, you know, with any luck, not making the same mistakes. We just find NAA just finds these stories to be really important to tell and demonstrate to the audience that we're all in this together. And so do take advantage of one another and the learning that you're all encountering every day in your programs. So Sarah, Jonathan, Phoebe, and Jerod, thank you again for a second time, taking time out of your busy work to present your programs and avail yourselves to the questions and to the practitioner community. We're really grateful for your time today, and thanks to each and every one of you, and we'll see you all soon. All right, take care, everybody.